Fantasy sports fans, listen up. Did you know that your chances of winning on draft are 80% better than on salary cap sites? That's right, 80%. That's why draft is my favorite fantasy site. No more getting crushed by the pros, and it's not just me. More than 1 million people that have already downloaded Draft 2. Play in a real live NBA draft right now. Be done in under 5 minutes and get paid out the very next day. Drafts are filling up every second, so you can join one whenever you want. All new players get a free entry into a real money draft when you make your first deposit, but you have to use my promo code B2B. That's B2B. That's right, play in a real money draft for free just by using my promo code B2B. But it gets even better. Draft is so sure you'll love it that they're even offering back-to-back listeners a money-back guarantee of up to $100. Just search Draft in your app store or go to draft.com and come play free right now with promo code B2B. Welcome to a Thursday edition of the Back-to-Back podcast. We got a special guest today, Mr. Bob Voulgaris, coming to you from an undisclosed location. How's Coltrane doing, my man?
Coltrane's doing well. How are you doing, Tom?
I am doing good. It was a pretty crazy NBA game or NBA night last night. Pretty crazy.
Last night was insane.
I don't even know where to begin. LeBron James single-handedly beat a playoff team, hit the game winner, and that's probably like the third most interesting thing that happened last night. And so I want to get started with Russ because I had this huge rant number 2 lined up for this podcast today. And boy, did I get shut up. We all collectively hit the delete button, the backspace button, because that eulogy was a little too premature. That was unbelievable last night. What Russell Westbrook and Paul George, I think they scored 40 straight points against OKC. But let's start with this. The 4th foul on Rudy Gobert. You tweeted it last night. It was a hilarious call. Why was that call so hilarious to you, and why was it such a big deal?
I mean, it was hilarious because he didn't come close to touching him. It was just a bad call. I mean, obviously, Rudy's probably the most important player for the Thunder, just for what he does defensively. I mean, Russ just can't seem to get anything going when he's in the game.
Nothing.
So that was big. His 4th foul. His 5th foul was legit, but it came super quick as well. I think if you even look at in the second half of that game or the third quarter of that game, when Gobert was on the floor, I mean, yeah, the Thunder just were not able to score at all. And so that's big.
89 defensive rating when he was on the floor last night, and I'm sure it's pretty much the same for the whole season. But when he's in the game, no one can score. No one can score against the Jazz. Last night it was especially true. Yeah,
it's especially tough for Oklahoma City because a lot of what they do is trying to get Russ going downhill to the rim, and he just can't get anything going when Gobert's in the game. So he ends up settling for a lot of long twos, like out of rhythm shots. Or, no pass, dribble, pull-up jumpers with a hand in his face. And then I think it kind of discourages him a little bit too, I think. But once he came out, they were able to kind of get some things going. I think also the other key thing was it wasn't just Gobert was out. It was kind of a bunch of things that happened. Melo was out. They replaced Melo with Jeremy Grant. They replaced Brewer with Abrinas. I think that was key as well. Brewer gives him a lot of energy, but he's not really that dependable a three-point shooter. In fact, he's pretty below average three-point shooter. He shot okay for the Thunder. I don't know if you remember a few years ago when he played for the Rockets. I think he missed like 20 or 22 or something
in the corner. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
So, they had some stuff going for him. The game just kind of snowballed. I wouldn't take too much away from that. And personally, I think watching that game, it's pretty clear that Utah is a better team than them. Now, Oklahoma City could make some adjustments and kind of maybe get some confidence going. I just don't see them getting that fair of a whistle or that I wouldn't say fair, but that beneficial of a whistle 2 games in a row, especially the next game being in Utah.
Well, since we were talking about Corey Brewer, we got to bring in Coach Thorpe here. He's probably on the line. He's probably knows more about Corey Brewer than anybody. I actually have it written in my notes here. Corey Brewer post-ups, what the fuck? Look, last night in the game, Coach Thorpe was tweeting out Russ trade scenarios, soliciting Russell Westbrook trade. That's how bad it was. I wrote in my notes, it's over. Corey Brewer is posting up, and that's their offense now. They've degenerated into Corey Brewer post-ups. So, look, the Thunder, I don't know what it is, Bob. They're like cherry soda to me. Like, I know I'm supposed to like it. Everyone seems to like it, but it always makes me gag to watch them play offense. I mean, Russ, it's amazing that he's averaging a triple-double, but they have 400 fewer passes, but it's so ugly to watch. And yes, when Russell Westbrook is firing on all cylinders and he's hitting shots and he's being aggressive and Paul George is looking like Paul George, like, it can work, but more often than not, it is gag worthy, that offense. 400 fewer passes than Utah.
Yeah, Utah passes a lot. I mean, think about the way Oklahoma City plays offense is there's not really a lot of off the ball movement. Players are just kind of standing where they're standing. They might set a screen and then they might try to see if they can get something going. That's pretty much all they do. And then of course they try to get out and transition a little bit. But yeah, they don't really have any. You look at their team, they don't really have like a standard type of offense in terms of having like a facilitator at the point guard position, having someone who can really, hit a knockdown shot in the corner. They don't really have that. They don't have a real role threat, although Adams is a good post player and a decent role threat. He doesn't get the ball nearly as much as he could. It's just not a fun offense to watch. It's very uncreative. It was uncreative when Durant was there too.
Right.
So I think a lot of that is just, everyone kind of knows it's, Westbrook wasn't a point guard when he came out of college. He's never really been a point guard. Even when Oklahoma City was having a lot of success, it was primarily with Harden coming off the bench, handling a ball in a point guard position.
Back in like 2011, I remember talking to Griff when he was with the Suns, David Griffin. And I was like, what is the deal with Russ? Like, do they need a point guard in there? He's like, man, they could use a real Steve Nash facilitator at the one because he's not a point guard. He's not a point guard. He's an off-ball attacker.
But even if you had that, what would you do with Russ? You just have him off the ball and just hope you can have like drive and then kick and then have him drive. He's not a knockdown shooter either.
Kind of a blend with Dwayne Wade, right? Like the Dwayne Wade role where he's the pseudo point guard. He's a combo guard and you can kick it to him, but he also can cut. Like he's a great finisher in traffic. So I would have that because it would just promote more offense, more off the ball movement, more unpredictability. But we got Coach Thorpe on the line. So Coach, explain why we're watching Corey Brewer post-ups in the playoffs.
Well, that surprised me. And I mean, I spoke to Corey an hour before the game.
Because the offense, the OKC offense, that was when I thought it was over. And you were soliciting trade ideas last night, Coach. And then it just became the Russ and Paul George show. Once Rudy Gobert came out, I watched the game with my dad, and he was like, God, these announcers, they just keep trying to make it seem like this is going to be a game worth watching. And I was like, yeah, I agree. There's no way they're going to come back from this. Like Utah has manhandled them this series. And then sure enough, me and my dad were both wrong. They came back.
Which feed were you listening to? The NBA TV one?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Bob was listening to the OKC one, which I saw today, right?
Yeah, I had that one. I was listening to the Utah one at first, and then when it started to become a close game, I wanted to listen to the OKC one because I just knew they would start losing their mind, which they did. So it was kind of fun.
So give me some clips from the OKC feed. Like what was going down?
No, it's interesting. They don't really have any concept of like what's going on in the game. Like Paul George picked up his fifth foul at one point, and they made like no mention of it whatsoever. But it was his fifth foul, like a pretty key foul. And then there's just not a lot of there's just not a lot of analysis going on. It's more just like you're watching the game with two friends who are at the bar, maybe having a few drinks more than anything.
Who have a rooting interest.
A huge rooting interest, yeah.
Hey, Tom, would you mind if I take issue with what you guys were talking about when I first called in?
Go.
I completely disagree with the idea that Westbrook isn't a point guard, although I know what you guys mean. You're talking about the lead guard in the classical way. The idea that he needs to be like Steve Nash is so ridiculous. Let me explain why that is. I totally understand where your hearts are coming from. And you're totally right.
I never said he shouldn't be a point guard. I don't think he can actually play off the ball. I don't think that suits his talents at all. I just think if you're going to have him as a point guard, he's not going to be a facilitator. He's going to be a guy who's going to be driving the action in other ways.
Right. That we won't argue that point. I'm not at all trying to criticize you guys. It's more of just a I want to try to make a deeper point.
You said disagree, completely disagree.
But because with the idea that he can't be a point guard, it's the term itself that I disagree with. But here's my thing about the Steve Nash line. Steve Nash over-dribbled nonstop. The difference is he was just waiting, just like Rondo does now, for the right pass often, not every time. Sean Marion was once asked, this was publicly, what do you think about, all the Nash dribbles? And he said, we have total trust that when it's time to pass, he'll pass because he always does. And that's what isn't going to happen in OKC. They could run a flex offense if they wanted to, the way Jerry Sloan did with Darren Williams and Rodney Brewer and Kirilenko at the 3. All 3 of those guys could beat you up in the paint. Darren Williams was a bully in the paint. Brewer was a bully in the paint, and partly because he couldn't score outside 18 inches. And then Kerr and Boozer could shoot. And that offense was number 1 in the league. OKC could easily do that with Paul George and Westbrook with the power those guys have. Even Robertson, who's a big, strong guy. But they know that they can't run anything because they've got at least 3 guys almost all the time who won't make the pass when you're supposed to make it. Westbrook's the worst at it, but Paul George doesn't want to make that easy play. And Melo thinks every single second of the court is devised to get him a shot. Yeah, it's always been that way. So Billy, if you listen to their audio conversations on TV, he's always saying the same thing, more or less. We all know who he's talking about, but the point guard's not going to listen. He's not willing to play that game. And when he's magnificent, like he was the last quarter and a half yesterday, we see what happens. But we've also seen what's happened, in the lion's share of their losses. That's a choice he's made, and maybe a different coach can reach them. They're 0-2 and finding guys that can. They are limited ultimately. That ceiling is lowered ultimately because he's not willing to play it. I don't agree necessarily that he can't play off the ball. He won't play off the ball because he does cut whatever. He just won't do it. And maybe he could learn, maybe he couldn't. I'd love to see if he had played for Pop in year 1. He's totally enabled that way. It's very hard to watch.
It is. And that's the thing with me is like when Scotty Brooks was the coach, it was the same critique is like, it's Russ, it's the Russ show. And then taking turns with KD, they finished last in passes per game among postseason teams in 2014. He got fired. They missed the playoffs the next year. And then for the next 3 seasons, they rank dead last in passes per game by a mile. Right. And that's just the system. It's the Russ system. And for better, for worse. Right. And for right now, I think it's worse. I think 4 guys standing around, no one wants to play in that system. Like I probably embellished this in the rant the other day. Maybe I'll just double down. Like everyone who leaves OKC for obviously when they're not playing with a ball dominant guy, they're going to see their points per game improve, right? That's obvious. But I find it hard to believe that players are going to be scampering down to OKC to play with Russell Westbrook after they see what happened to Paul George and KD leaving. They see what happened to Carmelo. Not that Carmelo at 34 years old is going to suddenly turn into 24-year-old Carmelo, but I find it very hard to watch, and I got to believe it's hard to play with.
Who are the players, though, that have really benefited from
Oladipo and Durant you're thinking about right away?
I mean, well, I don't know that Durant necessarily got better with Golden State. He was just as good in Oklahoma City as he was with Golden State.
I guess they're searching for something different than what they had in OKC. And maybe it's just as simple as like, hey, they think they're better than coming off the bench for Russ, and they want more opportunity, and they're getting it. They're leaving for greener pasture.
Look at Oladipo, though. He doesn't even look like the same player. I think I think that's unfair to blame that on Westbrook. I mean, if you've seen the before and after picture of Oladipo's body, it's ridiculous. He doesn't look like an athlete in the first picture at all.
What he worked at in the offseason, I heard he did made 600 jumpers a day. I mean, he was always a stud athlete. He's in a different level now. And I agree that you can't just blame Westbrook, but there is, I mean, I talk to players all the time. There is an issue there. And that's why I tweeted that I wasn't all suggesting they should trade him. I was curious what his value was given what we're seeing. And what do you do? I'm friendly with Sam. I can't ask him this question. What do you do, Tom or Bob, when Paul George does leave and you now realize you're going to start getting the downside of Westbrook every year you go forward, and unless you keep pulling magical trades, who are you going to trade for next from your team? Jeremy Grant's got some value, but what is he going to get back? Or any of those guys? Steven Adams, you don't want to lose him. What are you going to do?
Coach, I think you raise a great point. Is like, what is the goal here for OKC? And I'd argue I think they might be happy with just Russell Westbrook averaging a triple-double and winning 45 games every year. I think the OKC fans might be happy with that.
Yeah, I think you're not going to be able to build a championship team with what they currently have. That's for sure. I mean, they kind of swung for the fences this year. I actually thought their team was going to be really good until they added Melo. I tweeted that. I think Melo was just a terrible addition for them. I don't know why they would add another player like that to that team already.
Right.
It's such a bad. He doesn't. First of all, he doesn't defend at all, and then he's not a good offensive player anymore. So it's just a bad mix. Yeah, I don't think that they really have much of a really high ceiling with the current structure that they have. It's kind of interesting though, because if you look back at that team, they really had some pretty interesting decisions. I mean, people say like, oh, they chose Westbrook over Harden, but they didn't really choose Westbrook over Harden. They chose like Perkins and Ibaka over Harden.
Well, because that was the Lakers with the Twin Towers and Memphis. They just kind of figured, from what I gather, they figured, hey, how are we going to make it through the West without two huge guys in the middle?
Yeah, that was really ridiculous. I mean, that was kind of the other thing is I don't think you have to. The other thing I would just take issue with a little bit, not that I'm trying to be like super difficult or anything, but I don't think you have to pass the ball a lot to have a good offense. Like everyone says, oh, Oklahoma City leads the league in the fewest number of passes. Well, the number 2 and number 3 teams since the All-Star break are Houston and Cleveland.
Right, but I don't like watching those teams.
No,
yeah,
but
hold on. James Harden
right.
Chris Paul.
I agree with you, Bob. I completely agree with you. There's more than one way to do this, but so this really gets down to the truth. Westbrook is not Harden and he's not LeBron.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line.
That's the issue. Yeah. No, exactly. But the idea that he needs to pass the ball. I mean, the thing is, like, you don't need to make as many passes as Utah does, but you need to have at least some players either surround him with some shooters. I think he's never really had any shooters on that team. Like, when has Oklahoma City ever had like knockdown shooters in the corner where he could
Anthony
just
Morrow for a little while?
Yeah, but he was unplayable because he couldn't play D, so he couldn't really play up that long. They've never really had that. They've never had.
What would you guys do?
Anderson.
What if we waved the magic wand and went back to that summer, knowing that Harden, it's not just about the money. Harden didn't want to play with those guys and still be third fiddle. He really thought he could lead the league in scoring and be MVP, and he obviously was right. And it's great to have that kind of ambition.
But is that true though? That he really thought that? That's why he
100%. Like I knew about the Kevin Martin trade way before it was coming, way before Harden had announced anything, and it wasn't that much of a secret actually. Right. We knew he was gone. And everyone on the team, when Kevin landed in Oklahoma City, every guy said the same thing. They knew it was coming. James wanted to go be the best player in the world, and God bless him. So you're Sam Presti with the power that we have now of hindsight. What do you do differently?
Then what could you do? I mean, obviously, you try to get rid of West. I mean, I would have tried to get Westbrook last year, to be honest, if I could have. I could have added Paul George to my team. I would try to make a trade like a year or two ago or before Durant even. Just because.
How high does he rank on your list of guys to build around?
For me?
Yeah.
I don't think he's in the top 20.
Who, Westbrook?
Yeah.
I agree.
For me, like he might be like 21, 22, 18, right. Something like that.
He's an all-star.
Certainly not in the top 15. I mean, he's like what you said, Tom. He's a great draw. He's an amazing athlete and he can do amazing things. But in terms of like you're talking about trying to build a championship team, I don't know that you could manufacture a roster with him. What you could do is you could have like they could have done is they could have kept Cantor and they could have kept Adams and they could have maybe added like the Slava Roberson and they could have maybe added one other player or Paul George. Right now imagine that team and Russell Westbrook's chucking like Iverson was chucking back in the day, and they were just going and just chasing every offensive rebound. I feel like that team could actually punish a lot of people. And that team could actually maybe contend for a championship. Maybe not now because you have Golden State so good, but like maybe 3 years ago before Golden State added Kevin Durant. Because that no other team plays that style successfully. No other team really tries to bully. Utah's kind of gotten into the bully thing a little bit with Favors. They've kind of let him kind of attack the glass a little bit more, but they never did prior. And I feel like that's something that's very, very difficult to defend in this modern age of basketball where everyone's trying to play like stretch fours and play like PJ Tucker at the 4, PJ Tucker at the 5. And there's just so much equity in just going to the glass. So if you had Cantor and you had Adams, and then you had Westbrook chucking, and then you had like maybe Paul George and Roberson, I feel like that team could be pretty fucking good.
Think about Westbrook. Can't shoot, won't defend. That takes out of the top 20 right there. You can't be a point guard that won't shoot or defend. Can't shoot and won't defend, and be a franchise guy, in my opinion.
He's defended in the playoffs sometimes, though. I mean,
sometimes.
He's after in spurts, right? Like if he wants to, he can be that great defender. But it's, as many have pointed out, he's not guarding Donovan Mitchell out there.
Right. He's also not that like, I don't think he's like that great of a student of the game in terms of like the idea that, okay, I need to shut down Ricky Rubio is just so absurd. Yeah. Like why would you need to shut down Ricky Rubio? Like, is that really the thing that you need to, put all your energy towards? First of all, Ricky Rubio is not a shooter. The game he went off, he was 2 for 8 from the 3-point line. It wasn't like he was really going off.
I texted this to Jade. I was like, saying you're going to lock down Ricky Rubio is like a starting pitcher saying, I'm going to strike out this 7th hitter.
Right.
It's like
you might want to live with Ricky Rubio going on, taking 20, 25 shots a game. That might be okay if you're the opposing team. If Rubio wants to take 20, 25 shots a game, he's not going to, but I don't think you have to shut him down. So yeah, it's an interesting series. This game 6 should be interesting. I wonder if Oklahoma City will go back to switching.
Yeah, I was just going to say, let's talk about that, because there was that tweak last night that I think both of you noticed. Yeah. Why didn't they go to that sooner? Do you see like what the trade-off is there? Because I think they figured out 2 things. 1, Melo might be unplayable, and 2, they need athletes to just switch everything.
Right. Well, they can't switch if Melo's in there because he'll just get bum hunted the entire game. Like I think Utah did it once. In the 4th quarter where they got a switch and Mitchell just basically went straight by him for a layup. And then they decided to do switches with a couple different players, which is interesting. I don't know why they didn't keep on going after Melo. And then before they had a chance to kind of do it again, they will. Yeah. So that's why I think it's a little bit tough. I wonder if he doesn't not start Melo. I mean, I feel like that's like such a no-brainer. If you really want to be a coach, that's like a no-brainer move. I mean, do you think like the other 2 players, you think Westbrook and George really think Melo needs to start?
Right.
I would do anything to make sure he doesn't pick up that player option for $28 million next year.
Yeah, right.
Like if benching him is what does it, like go for it.
Wow.
That's it. That's interesting. That was that whole dynamic of Gobert gets his 4th, which right away anyone watching the game knows, okay, this might mean something. And then very importantly, Westbrook hit those back-to-back threes. Because I'm arguing that if he doesn't make those 2 threes, he made the first, but if he doesn't make either of them, I don't know that he starts getting to the rim and finishing because he can get in a funk. And then we have the switching where Adams suddenly guards the 1, and Paul George wrestles with Derek Favors inside. And I watched it pretty closely. They were not. I watched Donovan's press conference afterwards too. He talked about how much better they communicated. Not really. I saw holes all over the place in their switching, but Utah was surprised. They won't be surprised now. But also, Oklahoma City has a full day and a half to start thinking about, hey, this is what we have to do. And it might be an opportunity where Billy just feels like I have an excuse now not to play Melo because they're just going to go at him every time, and that's going to crush him. And so at your point, Tom, is brilliant. Maybe it's even an added bonus of pissing him off. But, I mean, Jeremy Grant has become a good player. He just has. And valuable player with multiple abilities to make plays for you on both ends at different positions. So getting him in the game is always a good thing. Gets him a little bit deeper. Utah will be better against the switch, but I think it is the way they have to do it.
What do you think about the scheme that they have where the big comes up and shows or tries to swipe the ball handler? They're doubling Rubio, and then it requires George to come down from the corner, flash to the paint, which basically gives Ingles a wide open 3 every single time.
It's a nightmare.
It's the most ridiculous thing ever.
What are you doing?
Why do you care? Why are you doubling Ricky Rubio? Why are you trying to get the ball out of Ricky Rubio's hands? Right. He's a great passer. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it's just, I didn't understand it. I thought they were more passive with it yesterday, but equally terrible. And Paul George, as amazing as he is, has not been a racer at closeouts this series, as if Joe Ingles is Melo. Yeah. You got to fly out at him and pray he dribbles forwards. Because that's the only way, that's the only shot you get. And that's one reason why I think they put Melo on Donovan and Brewer on Ingles. Brewer's going to fly at you full speed. I thought that was a smart decision they made before the game. And now with the switching, again, Utah will be better at it without question. By the way, let's talk about what Donovan Mitchell is better, for me anyway. I didn't see this. I watched him on taping before this series. I just didn't realize what an exquisite finisher he is. He's got athleticism, skill, craft, patience. He's a very, very brilliant player for a guy so young.
His footwork is almost Kyrie-esque around the rim. It's just he's got such great balance and unpredictability in ways that Kyrie, where you're like, how did he see that angle? Donovan Mitchell does the same thing.
His pace is really good. I watch the game with my son as often as I can anyway. And, he's a point guard. He's 16. And Donovan Mitchell is a better athlete than my son's probably ever going to be. But he isn't always.
You sure about that? Are you sure?
Yeah. But he isn't always playing with that kind of athletic ability. That's what makes him so special, which is what really Westbrook needs to learn more and more, is that modulation of speed and that control. It's very hard to go as fast as you can and still finish. He's under control. And so watch it. He's not always running full speed. I coached a high-level, high-major point guard this year, one of my son's teammates, a big-time player, who's Mike Conley-esque in every way, shape, and form. But you almost never see that kind of athleticism. He only in certain spots. Mostly he's under control, and you still can't stay in front of him because you never really know when he's going to hit it. And so it throws you off balance. Mitchell has that. I've just been so impressed with him as a scorer, not just a player.
Steve Nash was the first one that I had heard who deliberately practiced off balance, wrong foot, wrong hand shots. As a kid, you're always taught on a layup, jump off, jump off your left foot and pretend there's a little string between your knee and your elbow when you're going up. And I just was always taught that. And then we watched Steve Nash before games just practicing wrong, just backwards shots.
Off foot. Yep, wrong foot. Yep. We do it every day now. Now it's part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing it.
So I think you've kind of hurt my viewing experience, Bob, because now I feel like referees are over whistling. Like they're just blowing foul calls all the time. And I feel like this is maybe a little bit of confirmation bias, because I looked into the stats and I don't think personal fouls are up. But when Kane Fitzgerald, who is public enemy number one in Utah since 2009, his rookie season when he called a phantom foul call and lost the game back when Jerry Sloan was the coach, when he called the foul on Rudy Gobert, I'm like, wow, there's not a foul there. And I feel like referees are just calling everything or just being a lot more aggressive with the whistle. But maybe I'm just seeing things.
Well, the shooting fouls are up. I mean, if you look at like right now, if you do like a 10-day moving average, they're at 9, maybe like 9.7 a game. Whereas earlier in the season, they've never, ever been above, except for the first few weeks of the season where they're at 9, where it's always the highest at 9.6. If you look just prior to the All-Star break, it was below 9. So the shooting fouls are up for sure. I think also what I've noticed anyways was the first few games of each series, there was a lot of whistles, a lot of weird whistles. Like, I don't know if you remember, the game one just was like every game all along the way was like a moving screen. We're going to call like a ton of moving screens and just stop calling them the rest of the series. So I feel like that is another thing that's kind of interesting. But I don't know. It's the way the refs are graded in the playoffs. To me, it almost feels like they're getting looked at a lot. Like when they miss a call, they're getting penalized equally as if they get a call wrong that they actually call. And so there's obviously, if the whole thing about basketball is you can call a foul on nearly every play.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is making it difficult for them to advance to the future playoff rounds if they're missing too many calls. So it seems like the league wants them to blow the whistle more. That's what I think. I don't think you can really blame the refs. I think the league has incentivized them to blow the whistle as much as possible.
But why would they do? Why to make sure that there's no altercations in the game, to keep things?
I just think it's a stupid. It's just a happy accident of the way they're evaluating these officials. They've got like a separate crew evaluating the officials, and it's separate from what the league directive is, and it's just kind of forced the game to be called a lot tighter. I don't think it's anything to do with keeping the game close. The other thing is, like, as the series progress, you'll see there'll be less and less calls. Like, I don't think we'll get like a happy whistle in a game 7.
Mhm.
So we're kind of in the beginning stages of the first round, and we need to relax a little bit. It's probably going to, as the playoffs get a little deeper, there'll be less calls. That's kind of generally how it's gone in years past.
Well, let's talk about this missed call as a transition, not because I really care about it, but holy shit, LeBron James.
Which one? The turnover or the goaltend?
The goaltend is one thing, but the irony is that like it wouldn't have mattered. I guess if you want to go like retroactive, like maybe things would be different if they called it goaltend. Maybe LeBron doesn't hit that next shot, but the sideline out of bounds thing was interesting.
That one's reviewable. I don't know why they didn't review that. That to me is ridiculous because we're living in an age when they review everything. Clear path. Is it a flagrant? Let's go take a look and see. And then in the last 2 minutes of a one possession game, there's an out of bounds call that is somewhat questionable. And they don't even really, does the referee even have to go over and review it? Can't just someone at the replay booth like buzz the scorer's table or something, be like, hey, let's take a closer look at this. This needs to be, why does the referee have to like spin their finger in the air to signal a review? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean LeBron. I rarely see him make mistakes. Rarely. I think that's maybe his greatest superpower is that he just always makes the smart play. It's just very rare that you watch him and say that was a dumb move by LeBron. But I don't know if that was obviously a mistake there. I don't know what he was doing. He was trying to make that pass and then just bounced off the sideline in that crucial possession there.
Sure. He played 42 minutes in that game, so. I don't know how much more he has left in the tank. I don't know if this series goes 7 and then they have another tough round the next round. It's just insane.
You said it. I mean, I think the greatest gift that they had last year, the Cavs, is that they swept the Pacers in those close 4 games. Like they swept
the next round too, didn't they?
Yep. Yeah, and I think getting that rest was so big for LeBron James doing what he did in the finals or just doing what he needed to do in terms of an energy standpoint. I don't know how he can do this anymore. He has 40 assists, and the next highest guy on the team has 9. He has 174 points, 100 points via assists, 274 points by LeBron, which is 58% of the offense for Cleveland. He's doing everything for that team. I don't know how else they're going to win games because the rest of the roster has been just garbage.
And remember, 82 games in the regular season, Tom, right?
Yep.
So you really have hit on a point that we should be paying attention to. You played. I don't know if you played it when you were younger, Bob. Tom played in high school, and the simple saying that when you get tired, it's not just the body that goes, it's the mind. You start doing really dumb things when you're tired. So LeBron's mistake, I think Bob's point of 42 minutes is right. He probably was exhausted. So, Tom, you're also right. He so rarely makes a mental mistake ever in a game. So my point is watch what happens in game 6, potentially game 7, and then next round. If we start seeing more of those kinds of plays, the national media will call him a choker or whatever they'll say. We'll know he's just exhausted and there's nothing left to give.
Yeah, the other guy who's playing a lot of minutes in that series is Oladipo, and look how he's fared down the stretch, and he's much younger. It's just tough to play that many minutes in that high of an intensity a game at this point in the season and expect to be able to play your best.
How do we wake up Kevin Love? How do we make this happen? Like, I think, did you tweet it, Bob, last night? Is just the post-ups didn't work. Maybe it was Zach Lowe.
No, I didn't really watch the first half of that game, to be honest. I was watching I had my eyes glued to Washington, Toronto.
I just feel like Kevin Love has so much more to give as a facilitator or as a guy who can operate the offense from the elbow or whether it's the post-up. And it's just nothing. And I remember this happened with Chris Bosh a lot when he was frustrated because he became like a corner 3. He just stood in the corner and it didn't feel like he was Chris Bosh anymore, that he turned into Kyle Korver. I wonder, how would you try to get the most out of Kevin Love? Coach, do you have any ideas?
Well, I mean, why are you asking me? You just said it. Is his game different now? Like, is it? No. I actually went back and watched tape the other day of him when he was with Peck and Rubio and Brewer and Martin and that really good first 5 for the Wolves, because I love their offense with Adelman. I'm using it for the high school team. I help a couple of high school teams, and one of them's already doing it. The other one's going to start Just incredible what Kevin Love could do. And he wasn't even in his prime yet. He was amazing. But there's different ways to give a player oxygen. You've got minutes. If a guy's not playing, he's got no chance to do anything. But then you got to put a system in place, and you got to put rules in place, and you got to demand certain things, unless they're primary ball handlers like Westbrook and LeBron and those guys. So Love's got to get partnership, and he's had that at times in Cleveland. He doesn't have it now. And so if you ask, I would say the same thing. Ray Charles had that great line when he was young, and he made a penny per album. He made a penny for every album sold. And his new agent or his new manager, a Turkish Jewish guy, said, if you ask for pennies, you get pennies. If you ask for dollars, you get dollars. If you want pennies from Kevin Love, just keep asking for pennies. If you want to try to get dollars, you got to start asking for dollars. But you have to do something. You can't just say it. You got to create something. And David Blatt, I thought, struggled with it. He's admitted that, I think, more recently to friends of ours. And I think Lou's just kind of LeBron figured out for us, and it's coming at a cost that we think we'll see either in this series or next series.
He's shooting 5 of 16 on layups.
He slimmed down a little bit, but I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. He was definitely a lot bulkier when he was with Minnesota, but he also looks like he's in way better shape now. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, because I don't know where they're going to get that second playmaker or that second guy to help LeBron when, hey, shit's not working for LeBron, or he needs to take a playoff because.
Yeah, they don't have that. That's impossible.
They don't have that.
They don't have it on their roster.
So Stu
going to Love in the post is probably their best option, but I don't even know if that's something that they're able to do at this point.
If you watch that Minnesota team, and I realize Adelman is an offensive coach that Tyrone never probably will be for lots of different reasons. Lou certainly was a much better player than Adelman probably was. They had an exquisite offense with Kevin Love. They did so many interesting things with him. Not just in the pinch post either. They would throw it to him out at 25 feet. And a guy like Kevin or Corey, guys that could cut, would cut right in front of Kevin Love and screen the guy in front of him. And Love would shoot it because he's taller than those guys. I've never seen that before, and I've never seen it since. I don't think the Cavs have run it one single time in Love's entire 4 years there. And it was a very effective way to get Love a three when the other opponent was just kind of sagging off him a little bit. They just kind of screened his own guy. They did so many cool things with him, and I just feel like they've gotten it's a lazy culture just to depend on LeBron the way they have. Let's see what happens. We know Coach Blatt, what he's done. He won the Euro Cup. He's one of the best coaches in Europe. Let's see how Coach Lou does when he doesn't have LeBron James anymore, because I think they've gotten real lazy with what they do, depending on probably the best players ever played.
I thought Sabonis looked awesome last night.
Awesome. So I'm really glad you brought him up, Tom, because you guys have dads. I know, Tom, you're a father, but it's a girl. Bob, you have any kids?
No kids, just a dog.
Congratulations, just a dog. So when you have a son, Tom, when your daughter's older, it'll be the same thing. They're challenge anything you say typically. And so the game starts, and I've got the Pacers game on in my office, and I had both early games on. And I said to my son when Sabonis came in, I said, I really like him. I think he's going to be really good. And Max said to me, why? Like with such disdain. And
did you tell him who his dad was?
I did not. I said nothing. We try to just really focus on learning. I'd use it as an IQ opportunity, but I'm also paying attention. I'm going to tell him about that, but it doesn't even matter. You could just see a feel this guy has. And what I said to him is, I think he's going to end up being a really good shooter, and he just knows how to play, and he's got great size. So luckily, my son is a nice boy. He's not a jerk. As he started making his plays, like, Dad, I see it. And I had missed a couple of his shots because I was watching the other game, the Wiz game. And Max said, you got to replay this one. So I go back and watch it. He's going to be a very good player.
He made 2 tough plays, bad plays down the stretch. I mean, just mental mistakes. He made a horrible pass, and then I forget what it was, the second one. And then he gets a wide open, awkward. It's like the hardest shot in basketball, Coach. Yep. Like 10 foot in, like the rim is straight on.
No way is he making that.
And he swished it in the clutch. It was an incredible. I don't think people who haven't played basketball, I don't think they understand how hard that shot is to make.
Right. No, you're completely right. And let's compare that to, because I watched the form of that shot. Just did he really shoot it, or did he kind of just hope it would go in? He shot it. Go watch the fourth quarter, last 5 minutes of DeRozan's shots, and in fact, one of his passes, the lob that he threw, that was terrible. He short-armed everything. I call it T-Rex. He T-Rexed everything. And the weight of the moment was too big for DeRozan, mostly. He had made one big shot. But I think that, and then, of course, they started doing pretty well, and it was easier when other guys started scoring. Now they've got through that hurdle. He'll be cleared up. But you're right. That was I didn't see the Sabonis shot live. When I went back and saw it on tape, I figured he'd miss it and someone else tipped it in, because that's just a shot you don't make.
They need something out of Darren Collison and Victor Oladipo. I think they shot 3 in 19 yesterday. Victor Oladipo just looked fried. Just in the same way that Kevin Love lost weight, and maybe that's good for his shape and his health long term. But man, it just looked like he had nothing left. And he's going to need something, because in Game 6, they have a real opportunity to wear out LeBron for Game 7. They have a real opportunity there. I wanted to bring this up in the NBA Reddit. It was really cool. Same story happened twice. Number 23 hit game-winning shot and scored 44 points in Game 5 of Eastern first round, with series tied 2-2 in Cleveland. Michael Jordan did it in 1989, and LeBron James did it in 2018. That is pretty fucking cool. It's a 1,000% coincidence, but it is.
Didn't they run the Craig Elo play, by the way?
Yeah. That was such a cool moment. You never know, like, if LeBron's checked out just because he knows this team isn't going to win a title. But when he hits that shot and then just plays it up for the crowd and gets up on that scores table and plays it, it's cool to watch. It's cool. What an insane night of basketball. I didn't get to watch much of the Toronto Raptors Washington Wizards game, but Coach, take it away, because I didn't get to watch that one, but obviously that's an interesting series right now.
It's just like the what I said about Westbrook, and I tweeted this last night that Bobby Knight once said, "Mental is the physical is 4-1 as it relates to basketball." It made no sense to me when he said it. I was a high school player, but it makes all the sense in the world now. And although I would change it a little bit to the emotional part, which does connect to the mental, obviously, because it's not the physical. Westbrook seeing those 2 or 3s drop changed everything for him. And then Rudy being out made it even better. Toronto was just bad. The Wizards were in control, I thought. And then suddenly Toronto makes a couple shots and their swagger's back a little bit. And at the same moment, wide open shots. In fact, we could be talking about a very different thing right now if just Washington shot better, or even Utah. Utah had plenty of open looks when they were up 24 to go up 34, and then the game's really over. Not to mention that when it was getting closer, the Wizards just started missing shot after shot. Markieff Morris was just a disaster, I thought, yesterday, and that just kind of snowballed. These are human beings; they're men, but that emotional. That's why I've been tweeting about this. Winning a quarter by 10 points or more. If you can swing that kind of momentum, I think teams are 22-1 if they've won a quarter, any quarter, by 10 points or more, and have never lost a quarter by 10 points or more. 22-1 is not statistically insignificant. And I know as a high school coach, we really focus on that, not just quarters, but just runs. Pros are obviously much better. We can control the clock more too once we get it up 25, whatever. If you find a way to get that margin and get rolling, it's hard to flip it in a short amount of time if you can really get it. It's just hard to grab it, and so Toronto got it right at the right time in the fourth quarter, just as the Wizards lost their feel, their confidence, and when John Wall is taking threes because he has to, you've won. When he's taking them because he wants to, different story. But when he's taking them because he has no other real shot, you're gonna beat those guys.
Bob, that tweet with the play where John Wall in the corner just hands on knees the whole time.
So yeah, the Second Spectrum gave up this information where basically the percentage of time a player has played slow in a game based on their metrics of how they calculate slow, medium, and fast. And the number one guy in the league is is LeBron, which I think we would all know because he's exhausted. I think John Wall might be number 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
I think kind of crazy.
Yeah, James Harden's always up there too. I think just defensively they park him on the guy that he doesn't have to work as hard and tries to get some breaks, some rest. Same thing with John Wall. But on that possession, for those who haven't seen it, Bradley Beal is creating at the top of the key off the ball. And if you didn't think that John Wall liked Bradley Beal, this confirms it, because it's just he's slumped over in the corner, hands on knees for the entire possession. Possession.
But he came back like 10 days before the playoffs started or something like that.
Yeah.
So he can't be in peak physical condition after coming off that injury.
No, and he's playing 40 minutes now.
Yeah,
44
exactly.
last night.
That game was just a random game. Like if you watch that game again and you just mixed up all the order of all, and you didn't have a score, and you just mixed up the order of all the plays, you would have no idea who won the game. Like if you didn't know what the sequence of events was, because basically, as Coach said, just in the fourth quarter, the Raptors had just a couple fluke plays that went their way, and then the Wiz just took like some shots that they didn't hit. I thought the key thing that the Raptors did in that game was they went back to Valanciunas, because they weren't able to. The Wizards didn't really shoot great at any point in that game except for the third quarter. But they were doing really well on the glass, and the Raptors they still didn't. It's not like they had like a great defensive rebound rate when Valanciunas was in, but when he was out, I think the Wizards rebounded 50 or 56 or 57% of their misses, which is very high, obviously.
Hey, you just brought up a really good point, though. First of all, you're both you guys talking about Oladipo's minutes and Wall's minutes. I mean, that's you know that you're preaching the choir on that with me, and I would guess most of our listeners, we aren't the ones who subscribe to the idea that in the playoffs you should go ahead and play your guy 44 minutes. No, you shouldn't. But your point on John Wall just now, Bob, that's going to be something we're talking about when the Warriors play the Pelicans. Because I keep saying this, I don't know when Steph Curry's coming back, and I don't know when he's going to be any good when he comes back. Those are factors, and they're playing the fastest playing team in the league.
Yeah, I don't know that it'll be a huge factor in some ways, but I don't know that it'll be the difference between like the way like the Wizards play with Wall, where Wall has to have the ball a lot and he has to drive and create, and they have to get stuff in transition. The Warriors do a lot of their stuff with ball movement, so it's not like Steph Curry has the ball the entire time. But he's
moving though.
We'll see how able he is to get open off of screens and stuff like that.
But they're not moving the ball like the Rockets maybe do sometimes while standing still.
They're moving a lot and they're moving fast, but it's different than having to have the ball in your hand.
Oh, no doubt.
And play 44. Wall played 44 minutes yesterday, which is, and they're also trying to fast break a lot too, right? He's trying to get the ball and go in transition. Right. Whereas I don't think the Warriors really do that a lot in that way. They maybe go in transition, but it'll mostly be through passes. Won't be from Steph Curry. Have you ever seen Steph Curry get a defensive rebound in the paint and then hightail at the other end of the court to go in?
Right, he's going to stop and shoot the three.
Yeah, he's just not doing that as much. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't think the Pelicans match up very well with Golden State. I feel like even without Curry, the style of play the Pelicans played against the Trailblazers, first of all, they're going to have to go to a completely different starting lineup. They probably can't play Etuan Moore, because if they play Etuan Moore, then who guards KD? Are they going to put Davis on KD at the start of the game? I don't think so.
That would be amazing.
Mirotic maybe. Mirotic guarding him. I don't think that's going to work very well. They might do that. They might start the game that way, but eventually they're going to have to play someone else in addition to guard Durant. And then who guards? I think Drew does a pretty good job on Thompson. I think that'll be good. But on the other side of this, Trailblazers had nobody who could guard AD, but I feel like Golden State has some guys who can guard AD. They're probably better suited to guard AD than any other team in the league, because they can throw Durant at him, they can throw Green at him, they can throw Iguodala at him, they can throw Looney if they want to go big. I'm sure I'm missing a few other guys. Draymond Green on him, obviously.
You just named 5 guys, so
yeah. So it's just different. Whereas the Trailblazers had Aminu, and that was it.
Well, the thing about this series is I was on Levitard yesterday, and Dan Levitard is convinced that AD is the best player in that series, even if everyone else is healthy. And so he's trying to get me to say it. And I think Steph, just because he's so transformative offensively, like a guy we haven't seen offensively, like in this generation, I probably lean towards Steph. But AD, like, I think they got guys who can guard him. I think not OKC, Golden State has KD, has Draymond Green. And if they're dialed in, I think that's going to be tough for them. And I don't know if there is a way to beat the Warriors other than have Draymond Green be suspended and LeBron James on your team. But I think ultimately it's going to be a tough series in general. But with AD playing this way, it is a close race. Coach, you think he's the best player in that series?
I do. I'm an enormous fan of both Curry and Durant. But your point on Curry, we've never seen anything like him. You're right. We've never seen anything like Anthony Davis either.
He's is he David Robinson? Like who?
No, he's got part of that. His ability now to get buckets with floaters, with pull-ups, with threes, weak hand, post moves. He's got everything. Like his arsenal is full. He isn't the driver and ball handler LeBron is. I'm not saying he can't get even closer to that. He's taller. It's harder the taller you are. Like Durant, he could be Durant with the ball handler. He probably won't get there. Have you seen pictures, by the way, of what he looked like when he was in high school?
Yeah, he's changed his body. Even since he's first come into the league versus what he looks like now has changed. He's so much thicker now.
Yeah, huge shoulders, and he just
when he flexed, like every time he did something big in that series, he flexing down the floor. It's terrifying.
Right. He I think if I was coaching him, and I don't know him, but if I was coaching him against Draymond, who I'm just blown away with his ability to guard the post at his size and lack of jumping and all that. He's one of the more brilliant post defenders I've ever seen in my life. But I would tell Anthony to keep it super simple. Just jump over him and shoot it. If you start wrestling with Draymond Green, you're just going to lose. He's going to put you in spots you don't want to be. He's really super smart that way. But if you just go over the top of him, there's nothing he can do. And obviously he can jump to 13 feet, so the lobs will be there. He's going to have his hands full. You guys aren't wrong. Although Iguodala and Draymond are going to have to continue to make shots. Every time Draymond makes a three, when no one's within 25 feet from him, he's screaming at the other team, you guys better guard me, all that kind of stuff. They're not going to. Yeah. You got to just keep making it. Iguodala too he really needs to make shots because I think those guys will help hugely if, for example, Mirotic is on Durant. But I do think Davis is spectacular. I think Drew is huge in that series because when he can score, he becomes a very special player from what he can do defensively and his overall IQ and just not being in a rush. He's valuable that way. But if he can play some bully ball, which I always thought he could do, they have no chance without him. Even if Davis is the best player on the court, it doesn't matter. Holiday's got to pretty much be the third best player, and that's a challenge.
Yeah, that's an interesting series. I actually don't understand why with Curry out, you'd need to leave Draymond Green or Andre Iguodala wide open from three. Like I get it when Curry's in the game, but I just didn't understand what the Spurs were doing. I get that they didn't really have like the players, so they had to, they felt like they had to play Mills a lot, and Mills would be forced, to guard Klay Thompson a switch to guard. He was guarding Durant on switches sometimes. But yeah, I don't really get why that. I don't think they'll be that. I don't think that'll be New Orleans' plan will be to leave him open if Curry's not in the game. But we'll see. I guess we'll see that. I think they have a pretty good defensive coach. I feel like that Erman guy is quite good. I feel like their defense has changed a lot over the course of the year. They've gone through a lot of different things, and they finally seem to have found something that worked versus Portland. And I think they'll probably find something that works okay versus Golden State too. It'll be interesting.
What is your take on Alvin Gentry? Because I know he was probably pretty low on your list of coaches in your. Yeah,
I'm not an Alvin Gentry fan, to be honest. I feel like I'm pretty simple in my coaches' evaluation, to be honest. Back when I was betting, it was more how they performed when I felt like they had a favorable matchup. But now I think it's just like, how do you understand like the analytics of the game in terms of like what? So like, look at when they played DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis at the same time. first of all, nobody wants to run against New Orleans because they just play too fast, right?
Yep.
No one says, okay, let's get into a track meet versus the New Orleans Pelicans. This will be our advantage. No one says that. And so they were, I think, earlier in the season, they were maybe like the 4th or 5th lowest team in terms of how often they went to the offensive glass. So imagine that. You have DeMarcus Cousins and you have Anthony Davis and you have Rondo, by the way, who's also a very good offensive rebounding from the point guard position. Holiday can rebound as well. And you're basically just saying, okay, the shot goes up. Let's make sure we get back in transition. Let's take the most athletic player the game has ever seen in Anthony Davis, and let's never let him go to the glass at all. And that to me was just brain dead. And they would talk about it too, like, because he came from that coaching tree that said, we're never, ever going to, the Doc Rivers, we're never, ever going to go for the offensive glass ever. And they had the best defense in the league that year. But that defense would have been good if they went to the glass. It wasn't like that was why their defense was great when the Celtics won the championship. In fact, when they played Game 7 versus the Lakers, in a game where nobody went in transition at all, ever, because it was a Game 7 of the NBA Finals,
right,
the Celtics were still hightailing it back to make sure that nobody would get back in transition. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. So that alone makes me feel like he's not that intelligent of a basketball person. That's a very simple thing. Someone could say to him, maybe he'd be like, oh, you know what? You're right. Let's do it. But he's never come to that, like, okay, let's maybe see what Anthony Davis can do if he kind of like the shot comes from the right corner or the right above the break on the right side and Davis on the left side, and he comes, that's generally where the rebound's going to go. Why not have him go that way? First of all, he can curtail transition anyways because he's so long if he doesn't get the rebound. They have the types of players who can curtail transition in Davis and Drew Holiday, who are very good open court defenders. So that's one of the reasons why I don't think he's a great coach. I also feel like he just gives up on his team sometimes. They played a game earlier in the season, they were down 5 with 36 seconds left, and the coaches, the assistant coaches jumped off the bench telling them to foul, and he just told his players, no, we're done. I just feel like that to me is just in a spot where they could have jumped up in the playoff race, and this wasn't like they knew they were going to play Portland. It wasn't like they were jockeying for Portland because they got really lucky in the last game of the season that Utah lost and Oklahoma City won, and this happened and that happened. So that just seemed like brain dead to me. And then when I hear him talk about X's and O's and stuff they want to do, I feel like he got a lot of credit for having Steve Nash and Stephen Curry and being the offensive guy. And so it helps. I thought that maybe he wasn't, but look, he's done a great job there. The team is adjusted. They've added in Mirotic. They've added in Rondo. They've done a great job doing that. So he probably is a better coach than I thought he was, but I just wish that they would just let these athletes that they have actually try to be athletic and make plays. And even in the playoffs this year, they're not getting nearly, they played a team that had Mo Harkless playing at the 4 and Mino playing at the 4, and they didn't get nearly as many offensive rebounds as they could have. In fact, they're still below league average in crash rate and offensive rebound percentage.
Coach, you're playing the Warriors, fully staffed Warriors. Okay. Steph Curry's healthy. Kevin Durant's out there. Draymond Green's out there. Would you rather have Nikola Mirotic or Boogie Cousins?
Oh, wow. The first thing I would want to do is look back. If memory serves, I think Cousins is one of the few guys that Draymond can't guard. I may be wrong. There's a couple guys I remember watching where he just can't guard them, which is startling because he guards almost everyone so expertly. And even then, I still think I might want Mirotic because you're going to have to beat them with threes, not twos. And I don't want DeMarcus, Bob's point, I'm a big offensive rebound guy. I just always want possessions, and I feel like you don't have to sacrifice on one end. It used to drive me crazy when Bob's describing this, watching Dwight Howard 1 versus 4 and keeping balls alive, and no one else was there to go get the tip because you couldn't rebound cleanly against Dwight Howard. Like you can't rebound now cleanly against Steven Adams, and it's just they're infrequently not a second guy to go clean that up. That's why I like Jeremy Grant in the game. It's hard to rebound against these studs. So Cousins, all the threes he would launch, you lose that anyway. Plus he's just a nightmare. I like the pace at which the Pelicans are playing. I think Rondo is always looking ahead for the early seal, early post up for Davis, which is smart. DeMarcus Cousins playing to his capability, including the mental and emotional aspect of it, I'd feel differently. And I'd want a whole season to continue to try to build whatever I thought would be the best model. But he's, one thing about the playoffs, as we've been talking about, that the emotional change that can take place so fast the pressure that's there. You want stable professionals. It's okay to lose your temper and inspire. But
what are you saying about DeMarcus Cousins?
What's that?
what are you trying to imply about DeMarcus Cousins?
Yeah, it is. The way he sucks the energy out of a room does not coalesce well with what you need in the playoffs.
Yeah, I would versus the Warriors. I think, look, they're not going to win the series anyways versus a fully healthy Warriors. So I would try to junk up the game as much as possible, and I would just gamble that we would get like 5 or 6 games of like good DeMarcus Cousins, and I would just try to pound him all game. I would just put him in the post. I wouldn't have him on the 3-point line shooting. That's corners. I can promise you that.
But he won't. But he doesn't. He'll fight with you on it because I agree. Am I wrong, Bob? Have you ever studied it where Draymond's numbers directly versus DeMarcus, or Tom? You ever seen it?
I feel like he doesn't defend him very well. He's like the guy that nobody defends really well. If you want to look at it, I can't remember who I was looking at. There's a certain player that I was looking at, and I was looking at the players he's a very good. It was Nerlens as well. It was like a pretty good defender, but he just struggles against the bigger guys, and he just had no chance against DeMarcus. I mean, just
nobody can guard DeMarcus.
Yeah, like maybe Steven Adams, right? Could probably guard DeMarcus.
Yeah, he'd be the best one. And what's funny is. Tells you a lot about Rudy Gobert because Adams was having his way with him a little bit earlier in the series. Gobert elbowed him in the jaw. He just laughs at that. It really hit him hard in the jaw. But over the course of the series, Rudy really started coming on. There's nothing soft about Rudy Gobert because Steven Adams is the biggest, baddest man in the room every time he shows up.
Yep.
I remember before the season, Kevin Pelton and I, before I left ESPN, left the mothership. We did a preview of the season, and we ran an analysis that looked at which lineups, what type of lineups actually give the Warriors problems. And this is like saying, the Warriors don't have problems in general, right? It's very hard to get an edge against the Golden State Warriors, right? But when you looked at the numbers, it did seem to show a small effect that if you go big with 2 twin towers, rather than trying to match them with like speed and length, like speed and athleticism, like it seemed like going with 2 traditional bigs or 2 big bodies underneath was an effective option as any. And I think with Boogie Cousins and Anthony Davis, you can do that. You can play bully ball and just crash the boards. Like Bob, you so astutely said, is like they have a great rebounding team if that's their job. Like if Rondo and Drew and Boogie and AD are going to crash the boards, I think that's their best option going against the Warriors. And I think there is this tendency to see the Pelicans go on that run at the second half of the season, sweep the Blazers, and assume that that's their best option against the Warriors. But I think if Boogie's healthy, I would rather that where they have Boogie and AD just bludgeoning them down low. It's probably not going to work, but I think that gives you your best option.
Yeah, I agree. I like that.
Thank you for joining the Nerd Brigade. This is Jade, your producer. For more, if you want to hear the final 30 minutes of this interview with Bob Voulgaris, you can go to patreon.com/countthedings. An extensive conversation on the 76ers. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.
So how would we not talk about the Sixers at this point?
They're going to the finals, guys. They're going.
They're going. You think so? The NBA
think
finals?
So. I love their makeup of their team. I don't buy into the idea that they're too young